Hello, and welcome back to the Better Divorce Podcast. You may know me, you may not, but you found the right place if you are either contemplating, strategizing, surviving, or trying to heal from divorce. Today, we're going to talk about money. So get your notepad, take notes, you're going to need it. My guest today is named Kathleen Judge. And I love that because I hang around with a lot of judges. I'm not intimidated by judges. I actually love judges. So Kathleen is not a judge, though. She is a financial advisor. So we're going to talk a lot about money, but just briefly about why you would want to listen to Kathleen's story. It's one of great loss and regrowth, as most of us can attest to, through an unexpected divorce. Anybody else relate to that? 11 years before, she quit her corporate job to stay home and raise kids, and suddenly and unexpectedly, the marriage ended. In her 40s, along with the kids, and responsible for their financial future, she dug right in and started to create a change. So welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here, Kathleen.
Thank you so much, Paulette. It's a delight to be here, and I just want to say I love your podcast. You have so many great guests on, and you're so encouraging and uplifting, and I just appreciate the work that you do for women who are going through this really difficult situation.
Thanks. I don't think about it often, but I appreciate that. And she did not tell me she was going to say that. I had no idea she was going to say that. So, I just wanted to give back. So many experts are in my Rolodex,
Mhm.
whether there be, judges or lawyers or financial planners or real estate and mortgage professionals, because it isn't just finance as in, investments. CPAs too, and taxes is another big issue. And of
Mhm.
course, health insurance or insurance in general is another big issue. But of course, there's the mental
Mhm.
health aspect of it too. And what do we do about the kids? The parenting plan? Do we need
Absolutely.
couples counseling, children's
Mhm.
pediatric juvenile counseling? So there's a lot of Rolodex people. That's an old term, but hopefully you're old enough to know what the hell a Rolodex is.
Yeah.
But I still love the term. Um, and so many of them say, oh, they have like a glimpse into a world that is much more of an expertise than I have. Although after,
Mm.
many, many years of doing this work now, I feel like their expertise has become a part of my DNA, where I'm able
Mm.
to connect the right person to the right issue. Now,
That's
some of them are
amazing.
location driven, some aren't, but I thought of
Mhm.
no better way than to say, let me just interview you. And I'd whip out my phone, no matter where we were. These are back in the days when, before podcasts were really a thing. And it did start initially as a radio show in Boston, where I am from. And then when I moved to the Caribbean, to Belize, I couldn't take the radio show with me. So I thought, well, I don't know what to do with it. Sayonara, I guess. And then I thought, you know what? What's this podcast thing? So I guess it was
Mhm.
back in 2015, 16, it started to become a podcast. So yeah, we're going on year 10 in December. Hard to believe. And
That's so
it used to be
wonderful.
called
Congratulations.
Thanks. It used to be called the Thriving in Chaos podcast. So, it has only been known as Better Divorce Podcast for a few years, but it made logical sense. So, for those of you that are
Mhm.
new, that's why I do this. So, and I also have a degree in journalism, and I worked in TV, radio, media, and I was very comfortable interviewing people. So, there's your little Better Divorce Podcast 101 history. And thank you for
I
that.
love it.
It is a labor of love, and I really do see it as a baby. I like
Mhm.
to nurture. So let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about your story. So here you were. Now, how long were you married when you
Um,
found out that you were getting divorced?
yeah, so we had been married 17 years and together almost 25. So long term.
And was it his idea, your idea? Was it mutual?
It was his idea. And it was, people say, oh, there had to be signs. When you look back, surely you can see the red flags. And I have just dug through every crevice of the closets of my mind. And we used to talk about, shortly before the divorce, we had conversations that, oh, we're so glad we're not going to get a divorce, like the parents on our kids' soccer teams, because it's so disruptive to the children and the families. And so we didn't have a perfect marriage. And in fact, I had been requesting that we go to marriage counseling, but I certainly did not anticipate that our marriage was ending. So it came as a huge surprise, especially after I was in a corporate environment. Actually, I worked at Edward Jones. I started in marketing, and I was kind of a pioneer in digital marketing. This was back in the 90s, and they recruited me to build their first website. And so that was a fantastic project. I fell in love with the company and its values. And then we adopted twins from Ukraine. And I just wanted to step back. I wanted to, I identify as a professional, as a working professional. That's how I thought of myself. And at that time, it was either all or none. It wasn't. You couldn't just do 30 hours a week. So we owned a construction company, and I had always done all the marketing for the construction company anyway. So I just leaned into that a little bit more, helped run that, and then raised the kids. And again, did not anticipate being out of the workforce for 12 years because I thought of myself as a professional, and life just has a way of taking its own course that you don't expect. And so 12 years out of the workforce, and then a sudden divorce. And I was really devastated, of course.
Yeah.
It felt like an earthquake under my feet. Um, so, and that's really where my heart is now, for helping other women through similar situations where it feels so overwhelming to suddenly start thinking about, oh my goodness, I'm responsible not just for my financial future, but also that of my children, and really not knowing where to start.
Mm. So thank you for sharing that. It really gives everyone a good picture of where you were, the emotions that you were experiencing, but also the norm really. I do
Hmm.
speak to many women. Um, I would say it's 50-50. Well, no, let me say it's about a third, a third, and a third. A third where it's mutual, where both parties really
Hmm.
just say, this has run its course. We're fighting like cats and
Hmm.
dogs. We're roommates. We're passing ships of the night. We don't
Sure.
see each other. We don't share mutual common goals, aspirations, dreams, hopes. We've outgrown our, I don't know, connection, for lack of,
Hmm.
that's my word, not
Sure.
theirs, but giving you an idea.
Sure. Yeah.
Second category is the woman has been secretly or privately fearing, like, I hate this. I don't know what to do. You know, um,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm in the dark. The marriage feels uncomfortable. I don't know who to turn to. I don't know who to trust. So they start reading books. They start Googling at 2 a.m. They start going to podcasts. They're doing a lot of
Sure.
research, reading, like, what do I do? How do I got it?
Right.
Can we fix the marriage? Can I change? Can they
Hmm.
change? So a lot of women will reach out to me when they're in that initial stages, because 73% of divorce is initiated by women. And two
Interesting.
years is the average amount of time that those women internally contemplate divorce before they tell anyone. So that's another
Interesting.
third of the category of women that are
Mhm.
reading, researching, organizing, trying to keep it together.
Right.
Be real strong and courageous. And
Right.
sometimes they will have that conversation with their spouse, like, we need to talk, we need to go to therapy, like, something has to change. I don't feel heard, or I feel unappreciated, or I want to go back to the workforce or get a job, or I want to have, better sex, or whatever it is that's bothering
Right.
them.
Right.
It's different for
Absolutely.
everyone. So there is that. And then the third is the one that literally comes into my crying chair. I'm going to turn the camera. There's my chair right there.
And that's where I would have been.
And whether they're in Zoom or not, it's still, they're there, and they're devastated. And
Uh-huh.
it fell like out of the sky. They knew nothing. They felt totally hoodwinked,
Yeah.
overwhelmed, and they did not see it coming. Now, whether their spouse was just a really good actor
Mhm.
or they themselves met someone else, or there was something that happened, like what's the tipping point that made them say,
Mhm.
I can't do this anymore? So it doesn't
Mhm.
really matter what category you fall into. The divorce process and the judges and the courts, whether it's your idea, their idea, or both of you, divorce is
Right.
divorce is divorce is divorce. Now, the
Mhm.
emotional journey will be different for everybody naturally, but it's always very interesting to see, where that came from, and whether he was a really good actor or not. And no criticism, it is what it is. It just takes some time to get to radical acceptance and
Yes,
feeling that this is
absolutely.
what it is. Yeah, it's hard.
Absolutely. And no one expects to get divorced.
True.
So, no, as you said, no matter what category you're in, there's just so much grief and disappointment. And, you start questioning yourself and your own decision making and looking back throughout the previous parts of your marriage and what was I missing? It's just,
Right. How did I
as
not
I'm
see
sure,
that? Yeah.
yes, and I'm sure as your audience can relate to all these feelings, and it really is overwhelming.
Yes.
Um,
It's one of the first things I start with in my book, in my course, Better Divorce Blueprint, is not only your why, but really categorizing your feelings and getting very
uh-huh.
clear on the reality. And that if there's been any power struggles or control issues in the relationship, we tend to self gaslight and be codependent
Yes,
and sweep everything under the rug. Like,
I
if
see
their
that so
happiness
frequently.
your happiness depends on their happiness, and you
Hmm.
avoiding confrontation and not really wanting to have any difficult conversations, that can always add to the complexity of it and the fear
Hmm.
and the overwhelm, because you're not just dealing
Hmm.
with this statistics or the procedural
Right.
aspects of divorce. You're dealing with the emotional journey of it and coming to the realization of it. So here you are now in your 40s, and how old are the
Yeah.
children at that time?
They were 11.
Okay. And you amazing. You just kind of glazed right over that, adopting kids from the Ukraine. I'm like, I didn't see that coming like a hurricane. Like, well, hello, there's a tornado.
We could do a whole podcast on that story,
Yes.
but but we don't need to.
Well, that's amazing. And those children are quite blessed, and um much respect for you for that.
Oh,
So,
well, thank you. It's been, I feel so grateful for having the opportunity to adopt from Ukraine, and just really, it's expanded my horizons
mm.
in ways I could have never imagined.
And how old are
And
they now?
so they're 27.
27. Okay, so
Hmm. And
full
both
adults.
are
Awesome.
married. One
Congratulations.
one is expecting, so my first
Great.
grandbaby is on the
Exciting.
way.
We had our
Yeah.
first 8 years ago, so I can
Oh.
relate. Yeah, it is a very exciting moment. Now we have three, but so here you were. Now let's go back to that day if you can, when there was some turning point for you, and you
Mhm.
knew you needed guidance, you knew you needed support
Mhm.
and knowledge, but you didn't know where to
Yes.
turn. Now most people,
Mhm.
when they go through divorce, get that advice and guidance from an attorney, or they get that advice from a mental health practitioner. And yes,
Mhm.
there are many times too when they go to a financial planner. But what made you shift your thinking that I needed to find a financial planner to help me?
So that's such a great question, and what I see in a lot of my clients is there's one spouse in the relationship that primarily handles the finances, and the other spouse is much more hands off. And that's a a pendulum in some cases, and it's usually the wife who is hands off, not always, but usually. In some cases, she has never even attended a meeting with their financial advisor. And in other cases, she's been a little bit involved, but not very much. And so this kind of a life change where suddenly her husband and support system and life partner is gone. Not only all of that, but the person who held their finances together is also gone, and in some cases adversarial. And so she is, and I was in that situation. The way that our marriage worked, even though I had the aptitude and I had the interest in our finances, our marriage just didn't work that way.
Now,
He
was
made
that
the
by
financial
choice or by
decisions.
design? Meaning, did you choose to kind of hand over and delegate and,
I
and
I
let
I
him
would have
deal with it? Or did he just say, oh, I'm going to handle it. I got you.
he was more like, I'm going to handle it, because I love finances.
Okay.
And I've always, since I was, gosh, I think I got my first job at age, well, babysitting, probably age 10. I've always been a good saver and a good spender, and so it's always just come naturally to me. And I think there was probably, well, I guess there was a big part of me that resented not being more involved in
Mm.
those
Did you
conversations and
did you voice your
discussions.
resentment or did you keep it to yourself?
Probably a little bit of both. Voicing my resentment didn't produce the results that I wanted. And so over time, you just kind of, okay, pick your
That's the way it
battles.
is.
and
Yep, yep.
and yeah. And so when we divorced, you know I was so scared and just concerned, the worst thoughts going through my mind, like, okay, my kids and I are going to be homeless, and we'll never have a good meal again. I mean, your mind just goes to the farthest catastrophe. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. And I knew I was fully capable of handling our finances and probably doing so in what I consider a much more responsible way.
Mm.
And so I just said, all right, Kathleen, it's time. You gotta do it. And I found another financial advisor, a woman who I had known, and I trusted her. And she just came alongside me. We linked arms. She helped me identify the things that were most important to me. And then we put together a financial plan that reflected my values and my goals, which were different from the way that our finances were arranged when I was married.
Now, what did
And
you find was the biggest difference? Because I'm going to generalize here too, but I do find, and I think I was guilty of this when I got married very young and we had no children. There wasn't a lot of finances to figure out. I mean, we had no
mhm,
children. I was 23, he was 25, and there was a mortgage. You
mhm,
know, um, and the house was not in my name because it was a premarital asset that he owned prior. I was in college. And then I owned my own car. He owned his own car, right? So just giving you
mhm.
the young couple
Sure.
scenario, right? But
Mhm,
as we got, the years went on and we had children and he sold that house, got a new one. I kept track of the day to day groceries,
mhm,
gas, the kids' clothes and toys, and extracurricular, the
mhm,
debit card expenses, I called it, right? Or the checking account
mhm.
back in the
Sure.
day, right? But I
Yeah.
didn't have an idea of the big picture, the real
Uh-huh.
estate, the stock, the bonds, the 401k, the
Right.
pension, like I knew the micro, but not the macro. And I
Mhm,
didn't know there was a macro. So ladies,
mhm,
listen up. Make sure you know both the little, the day to day, and the big picture, the long term and the short term. It's your responsibility as a married partner to be included in both. I'm not a financial planner, but I'm going to give you that advice. So tell me,
Yes, you're
read
this is
read
music to my
that
ears, Paulette. It really is. But it is very true. And
but I
in
kind
my
of left it
situation,
that way. I mean, it was great. Like, I just, as long as the kids were happy and they loved their sports and did well in
mhm,
school and they were, what did I care?
right.
And that was a big mistake.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I didn't realize, now I do, but at the time, I did not realize how much power I was giving up. I knew that I was uncomfortable not being involved in those macro decisions. And, some macro decisions were made just against what I had counseled our family to do. And, and so you know that involvement is just so important, because I essentially gave up so much power
Yes.
by not being included and not forcing myself into those discussions. And
And I'm going to say
honestly,
people that are not willing to share the micro and the macro should not get married. If you are
I
not
agree.
willing to share every aspect of your life, every cell in your body, every fear,
Yeah.
hope, and dream you have, every penny you own, every penny you
Mhm.
owe, don't
Mhm.
get married. Um,
Mhm.
it's a big problem. And yes, you're so right, Kathleen. You are usurping and giving away your authority, your voice, your right,
Absolutely.
your value
Mhm.
as a couple, right?
Right.
Yes, great. Make cute kids and make sure they do well in school. And I'm being very stereotypical, but you're a couple and you're there to get involved
Mhm.
in the betterment of the family as a unit. And if
Mhm.
your spouse is waving some red flags about, oh, well, that's mine and this is yours and this is mine. If you hear the word mine, or as we say in Boston, mayan, run, run.
Absolutely
Do
run.
not get married to that person. There's no
Mhm.
such thing as mine and yours, except premarital. So when you're 20 something and you get married, I mean, yeah, the jewelry around your neck, I don't know, the clothes on your back, $728 in your checking account. I
Right.
don't know, I'm joking. The car I drove. But once you're basically commingling everything. Now, if it's a second or
Absolutely.
a third marriage and you're later in life, things might be
Mhm.
different, right?
Right.
And even
Mhm.
then, you have to have congruent values about money too. Yeah,
Absolutely. And what I find as well is I find that women who have been excluded from those decisions, that oftentimes their financial advisor, when they're going through the divorce, or when they are seeking, help from somewhere to the financial piece of it, as you know, can be very complex going through a divorce. And a woman who has not been involved is at a substantial disadvantage for just not having the knowledge of,
yeah.
there are some assets that look like they're equal, and yet they are not equal.
Sure,
You could have $1 million in a traditional IRA or $1 million in a Roth IRA, and you think, oh, same thing. It's absolutely not. The Roth
sure.
is worth
You got to pay
a lot
taxes on
more.
that traditional one. Yeah,
That's
so that has
right.
to be taken into
Right.
consideration. Yeah.
Right. And so, um,
And real
I
estate too.
find that,
Some of them have
uh,
much higher tax burdens, more of a liability than an asset with a mortgage. And I see now, not only do people have mortgages, they have home equity lines of credit. And they
yes.
have many other types of other second, third, and fifth mortgages. I've done several cases, one actually today, where there's $623,000 worth of debt. I did one where
Mhm.
there was $800,000 of debt that we had to file for bankruptcy. Now, that can't be done during divorce. Not giving legal
Mhm.
advice here. And again, I'm not an attorney, but when you go through it, trust me, you know what the things to look out for. So money has
Right.
so many push buttons. And also the thing to look into is the risk tolerance level of people. Some people are very conservative investors. They're not willing to lose a penny in the stock market. They're just not.
Mhm.
They don't like to
Mhm.
go to Las Vegas. They don't gamble. They want real investment strategies that are, real and to
Safe.
lower tax burdens. Others are
Mhm.
like crypto, gold,
Yeah.
whatever. And if that's a divorce waiting to happen, in my opinion,
It really
it
is. It
could be
really is.
worked out, but maybe not.
Mm, well,
Difference of financial risk, tolerance levels is a big concern with couples.
It really is. And again, for the woman who has not been involved and is not familiar with this terminology, with these concepts, she really is at a disadvantage. I work with a client who she post divorce, they're they divided their assets where she got all of the real estate and he got all of the retirement and brokerage assets, which on paper looked to be about the same. But guess what? She didn't have any liquid funds to move
Well,
forward
and
with her
it's
life.
it's great that she got the real estate, but I certainly hope that she didn't get them with mortgages, because depending on
And
her
she, and
credit
she
score and
did.
her debt to income ratio, she cannot get those mortgages in her name because she doesn't qualify for the mortgage. And it's all fair, well, and good that the judge awarded them to her if they litigated. And if they mediated, it was a horrible mediator. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
Because now she
Yeah.
has property that she's likely going to have to sell because she cannot maintain
Absolutely.
the properties because she can't afford it, unless she has a
Hmm.
great credit score, awesome income, and a low debt to income ratio. She won't be able to keep
Hmm.
those assets herself. And
Exactly.
part of the thing I see, and I don't know if you agree, but I see a lot of women who are willing to sacrifice their stability and financial future for the betterment of their kids, or they'll say, so they want to set up college accounts and pay for college and higher education, and they want a
Hmm.
down payment for their kids' houses, and and I'm like, whoa, 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 that's great. We all love our kids and want them to be happy and healthy and prosperous, but what about you?
Right.
What are you going to do? And they're like, well,
Right.
he has to pay for college. And judges, college isn't part of divorce.
Mm-mm.
It's
No.
part of mediation, and it could be part of the conversation, but it's
Hmm.
not part of the mandated procedural part of
Hmm.
it. And even with 529s and UTMA accounts, that's a whole nother muddy area, right? Of like, which one is more beneficial, and if they're at the age of 21 or 25, it becomes theirs. And then those accounts that have to be used for higher education, although those rules are kind of getting a little
Muddy.
vanilla now, they're not quite
Hmm.
so chocolate as they used to
Hmm.
be, a little bit
Hmm.
muddier, right?
Hmm.
It's so important that and I'm not throwing out financial stuff here that to impress people or to overwhelm you, but it's really important that all these aspects of it. um,
Well,
so
and I will say that, you know, coming into it, it's very common and it's very normal if you haven't been involved to feel overwhelmed and to feel like you don't know what you need to know. And so you want to look for a financial advisor who will walk you through step by step the process that you need to go through and be willing to be an educator. And so many women come to me and feel a huge sense of shame for not knowing all of the financial terms and the financial concepts and what's most important in their own personal financial situation. And, I really try to dispel that because there is no reason for a sense of shame. What you need is a good financial advisor who comes alongside you and um, understands the ins and outs and is willing to take you along for that journey. There's a research from Fidelity in 2021 that said only 25% of women are confident making financial decisions. So it is very common that women do not feel comfortable in this area. And I really try to make that clear to people because the first step in remedying your financial situation is just acknowledging that, okay, I need help, and I need help from someone who is trustworthy, and I need help from someone who is going to understand and be willing to be my champion. You don't just want a financial advisor who gives great advice. You, of course, that's part of it, but you need someone who will be your champion. in
Yeah.
this situation.
And another thing to consider, particularly if you're middle age, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, and you're a woman who's been out of the workforce, or maybe is thinking about regaining some education to re-enter
Hmm.
the workforce based on what you always wanted to do but didn't do for marriage and children and many other
Right.
agreements in the marriage, is that unfortunately the standard of living is significantly lower for a woman post divorce than it is a man. I believe
Absolutely.
it's a guesstimation of about 40%. So
Hmm.
that's very alarming or disheartening statistic too, is that you're going to walk away having a lesser degree of standard of living. And the thought of that is, that's why alimony exists, or as we call
Hmm.
it now, spousal support or maintenance. So you can
Right.
call it whatever you want, right? But and it's not so that if your spouse is here and you're here to swap it. It's to really have that person come over and give you a little bit of a boost, right? So that
Right.
you're able to enter the workforce, work on
Right.
your education, get back into the workforce. Now, if you're divorcing at 35, chances are less that spousal support is an issue. If you're divorcing in your 50s, it's more of one,
It's a
based on the
significant
fact of
issue.
not being in the workforce, right? And that's not legal advice. That's just kind of statistics over
That's just, yeah,
there.
that's just how it is, truly.
Right.
And in your 50s and 60s, a divorce can be particularly devastating because it can be very difficult to get a job when you're in your 50s and 60s
Yes, but
if
it's
you
also
have not
harder.
been in the workforce
Yes,
for a
yeah,
period of time.
but it's also harder to get spousal support when the closer your spouse is to retirement, because
Hmm.
you're not likely to get spousal support when your spouse is 60, 62, 65, and definitely not into their 70s, because most judges do not award it because they're retired. So there's there's a sweet spot there of like being too young, too healthy, too educated, too capable, even though you have young children at home, versus closer to retirement. There's so much to consider, which is so beneficial of why you need a divorce coach before you do anything, so you can really
Yes,
know all other
absolutely.
aspects, financially,
Hmm.
and know how long it is appropriate to wait, or can the marriage be fixed. There are many couples that it really can. There were, oh god, 21 main reasons couples divorce, and if you have all 21 of them, I would suggest that you probably divorce. But
Sure.
if you only have one or two, I'm usually the
Hmm.
first to say, I think this could be worked out. Now, if both
Hmm.
parties say to me, no, we're done, then it isn't my job as a divorce coach to say, are you sure? I've even had one couple in mediation. Um, Chances are, I think they were both kind of just putting on a real brave front, but they,
Uh-huh.
they drove together. They walked in together. They sat across from each other, happy, normal, respectful, kind. I mean, they weren't like lovey-dovey, don't get me wrong, but it was the most bewildering thing. Usually
Hmm.
there's a little bit of uncomfortableness, awkwardness,
Hmm.
tears, sarcasm, anger, none. It was like, why are we here? This is crazy. Oh yeah, we're going to do
Right.
that and we're going to do that. And they were on point with all the money, all the kids, the whole thing. It was just bewildering. That is not normal, everyone. So deep breath, right?
No, it's not. And I have had I have a similar situation. And typically when you divorce, one person retains the family financial advisor and the other person finds a new financial advisor simply for privacy reasons
Comfort.
and
Yeah.
comfort. And a similar situation where I'm grateful I retained both spouses and I have a wonderful relationship with them, but they had been married 30 years and I couldn't pick out what the animosity, where the animosity
Right,
is.
right.
And so I think, like you said, they're putting on a brave face, and I understand that.
Sure.
And everybody handles their situations differently. I think the most important thing that I want people to know in this situation is that they're not alone
Right.
and that there are financial advisors out there who will not just um, offer great investment advice that aligns your risk tolerance and your asset allocation and looks to your short term and long term goals, but who will also work with a team of professionals. So they bring in the estate planning attorney because you'll need to update all of those documents. All of those documents are going to need to change and be updated
or create them.
or created, right? And who will also work with your CPA because oftentimes your tax strategies and your estate planning strategies are very connected, and those are all connected to your assets. And so look for someone that is willing to walk you through the entire process and not just the investment side.
Right. Yeah. It's such a
It's
big picture. I also like the optimistic tone of your message too, Kathleen, and I want to bring that across is that yes, it can be overwhelming, stressful, scary, but it's the whole new chapter of your life. And
absolutely,
if you can get a fresh journal with a beautiful new writing utensil and create the story with someone there to hold your hand and help
yes.
you. And yes, I would suggest getting something with an eraser because sometimes you have to do a plan B and Tetris it, I call it, kind of move it around and look at
Yeah,
different aspects of it. And as you age and grow in your own hopes and aspirations, and your children age out and become adults, that will have a big effect. Do you know you probably
absolutely.
don't need life insurance anymore?
Right,
You probably
right.
don't need. There are some expenses you can probably eliminate that are a big hole in your wallet, and
Well,
those are things to consider.
y- absolutely. And my goal with every client is to connect their values and their goals to their finances.
Right.
And usually they haven't had that before. They don't know what that looks like. And
Right.
so one of the first exercises we go through is I say get a journal and just it can be nobody has to see it. You can erase it as many times as you want, but just start writing down some things that come into your mind that you would like to do.
Yeah.
They don't have to be practical. But just start thinking beyond the life that you've lived and think about what are the things that you as a person really want to accomplish in life.
Yeah.
And then that can really start that conversation to set those short-term goals. Then you get to the medium-term goals and then you get to the long-term goals. And then you're in a whole new place, and life is typically just very different and very wonderful in a wonderfully different way.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up values. I remember flashback many years ago, an old financial advisor I had wanted me to invest in Philip Morris, which is, they make cigarettes.
Mm,
And I said, no, I'm so not giving a company that's giving
sure.
people cancer and producing a product that makes me want to gag and smoke.
Hmm.
I'm not doing, but they pay great dividends. And I went, I don't
Right.
give up blank. I think I said that word. What they give, I don't want to do it. So
Right.
maybe that isn't important to you, but I just got a little flashback there of like, yeah, I think values have a lot to do with it.
Well, and there didn't used to be, but now there are so many wonderful products available for people who want values-based investing,
Hmm.
where you can exclude whatever it is that you don't want to support. You can exclude that from your investment platform,
Nice.
and it
Yeah,
is
this was
really
a good. This
nice.
was a good many years ago, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And what is the best way for people to learn more about you and follow you and reach out and contact you?
Yeah, so my email is very simple, kathleen.judge@edwardjones.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and, of course, Facebook, and I have a web page. So any of those options, and I will for for women who are going through this for the first time, I will do a complimentary stress test of their portfolio.
Right.
So we take a look complimentary and say, okay, where are we now? And where is that going to take us? And where do we want to go? So it's I want to be of assistance, whether we work together or there's another financial advisor that would work better with you. The goal is to set people on the right path.
You couldn't have segued out of this better. Uh, yes, the right path is important. Divorce isn't fun. It's not
Mm-mm.
free. It's not stress free, but it can be better. It can be
Mm-hmm.
optimal. You can have a better, more optimal, more efficient experience, one that's more private, more tailored to you and your spouse and your
Mm-hmm.
family. And the finances have a big part. So know the
Mm-hmm.
Better Divorce Blueprint is there. I'm happy to help. And of course, anytime anyone needs guidance on their divorce, reach out to me, Paulette at betterdivorceacademy.com. Thank you,
I love
Kathleen.
it.
And everybody, make it better. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Paulette.